Bem-vindos de volta para mais uma conversa com propósito. Dessa vez, um episódio muito especial em inglês. Eu sou André Caldeira, sócio fundador e CEO do Grupo Propósito, bem como professor do IBGC nos cursos de formação de conselheiros. E como é inglês, I'll switch to English right away and go ahead to introduce my very special guest today, Annette Simmons. Annette, please be very, very welcome to my podcast in Brazil.
So happy to be talking with you. Thanks.
Thank you. I first read Annette's book, The Story Factor, Inspiration, Influence, and Persuasion Through the Art of Storytelling, back in 2012. This book is actually considered one of the best 100 business books of all time. To this day, I use some beautiful quotes from her book on my speeches and classes here in Brazil, such as, in heaven and hell, people sit in large tables in feasts with 2-meter-long forks. In hell, everyone starves. In heaven, they feed one another. This is so beautiful. Annette is also the author of several other books, such as Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins, Territorial Games, Understanding and Ending Turf Wars at Work, A Safe Place for Dangerous Truths, and Drinking from a Different Well, How Women's Stories Change What Power Means in Action. After I interviewed Jerry Colonna, who wrote Reboot and was a guest here on my podcast, I actually built some courage and sent Annette a message inviting her to be here as my guest. She answered right away, telling me she got intrigued and that we should meet on Zoom first to see if our values matched. We did meet, and thankfully, we are here today for a very special conversation on the power of storytelling. Annette started her career as an export market research at Ericsson, then became an account executive at J. Walter Thompson, an advertising agency. She was then a consultant with Farr Associates, and since 1997 has been with the Group Process Consulting, a company she founded to work with storytelling, group process facilitation, and to help clients learn how to tell their own stories. We are here for a treat, I'm sure. So Annette, we always start our episodes with the same question for every single guest I have. Please share a moment, a part of your personal history that was fundamental to help define who you are today.
Oh, well, I could share many. But I was kind of a weird kid anyway, and our parents really didn't get along. They got divorced, and then Dad didn't know what to do with me. And so he was a social worker, so he would take whatever he had learned in a workshop, like weekend trainings, and he would teach it to me. So he taught me transactional analysis, rational emotive therapy. He was into transcendental meditation. This is the 70s. I learned that. I learned to meditate at like 12. And so it just framed my brain, particularly the transactional analysis. It framed my brain for a way to look for and document patterns. Because that's what transactional analysis is that we have different ego states and we act differently, whether we feel like a child, an adult, or a parent. And each one of those had games. And so the games people play was what Byrne wrote in the 70s. But when I wrote territorial games, it was really the games groups play.
Right. And with that childhood and upbringing, did you consider going to college to study psychology?
Oh, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And my dad was like, oh, hell no. Because he was a social worker. He was actually a federal probation officer. So his experience of psychology was criminals and stuff. And he was like, oh, no, you don't want to do that. That's depressing. And so he said, you could be a doctor, a lawyer, or an architect, whichever one you want. And so I chose lawyer, but I really didn't want to go to law school. And when it came time, I moved to Australia instead. And that's when I went to work for Ericsson Telecommunications, because in Australia, an American degree. I mean, a lot of people at that time didn't even go to university. So anyway, yeah, but ultimately I ended up studying exactly what I wanted to study. I just took a roundabout way.
Because if we think about it, marketing is about psychology, right?
Well, marketing is psychology, but if you don't do it well, you don't get to do it again.
Exactly.
And so that was my undergraduate degree, was in marketing. And so I felt it was a more rigorous form of psychology. Psychologists sometimes are just let out there to do what they want.
Right. And then what inspired you to first explore the power of storytelling as a tool for leadership and influence?
Well, so when I was at J. Walter Thompson, I worked on the Ford business, and I learned how to do research and qualitative research specifically. You can make a survey, but the thing is that you've already figured out what 7 answers they're going to get. But if you ask somebody to tell you a story, you get more truth, and you get more, it reveals more about context. And so my first book, I wanted to write about territorial games, because I would be sitting in a meeting and a woman would speak up, and then a guy would say the same thing and they all gave him credit for it. Or you'd have 2 egos in the room and they would fight and just trash the genius that was in the room just because of their infighting. And so I wanted to know about that, and I asked people to tell me stories, which was very different than, tell me what a turf war is. That's not the same thing. Tell me a story about a time when you saw a behavior you considered to be a turf war. And so they would say, well, this guy stabbed me in the back. And I'd be like, well, actually, that's a metaphor. No blood. Thank you. Thank goodness. But what is it that actually happened? And so their story would be, well, I started to speak, and as I stood up, these 2 turn around and they start whispering to each other. And it's like, okay, that's a territorial game. And so that one is invisible walls. They're intimidation. What do you mean? And people are like, maybe I shouldn't go there. Filibuster, somebody who won't shut up. Strategic noncompliance, which is they say, sure, we'll do it. And you're thinking you were lying through your teeth. So all of those things revealed themselves because of the stories. And I had begun, so I went back to grad school to study adult education, not training and development, because adult education is more about how to grow to be a good human being. Training and development can be how to grow to be a good unit in this cog. And I'm not so interested in that. So the history of adult education that I studied in graduate school tracked, like Benjamin Franklin, inventions of the library, that sort of stuff. So my brain got trained that way. Okay. And then afterwards, I realized that going to the National Storytelling Festival was my field work. So I was in grad school the same time I went to the Storytelling Festival for the first time.
Yeah.
And folklore stories.
What year was that?
94, 93, 94.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
It sounds really almost ridiculous when we say like that, right?
Yeah. I was 34 when it happened too.
But then please go on. I interrupted you.
Well, just, so I started to study with folklore storytellers. And there are skills and crafts about storytelling, but there's also, an ethic for finding your source stories. So the way I was trained is you don't make up a story. And unless you're a famous author and that's your art, you can make up a story that has truth in it. But if you're just a regular person, I really think it's better to figure out a way to tell the truth with a story that gives it structure. And so I trained with dozens of folklore storytellers. I went to their workshops. I was the only business person in there because everybody else wanted to learn how to tell stories at libraries. But I learned so much. My best mentor was Doug Littman. He taught me, of all the things he taught me, when I teach storytelling, one of the things that he taught me is that if it's a baby story, it's too soon to prune.
Oh.
So we don't give critique to a new story. What we do is we give appreciations.
That's so beautiful.
And you let it grow towards the light. Let the other
blossom
die on the vine. It is so powerful.
That's so beautiful. Love that. Last February, I was in India, and I was amazed by the rich stories and myths of Hinduism and the Mahabharata. What do you think is the role of stories in religion and societies? Because when we think religion, and like Catholics and all the others, they're deeply related to stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because stories can do something that rules can't. And religion might even be a subset of storytelling. Not sure. Because I think of storytelling as evolution's way to remember what went wrong so that we don't have to do it again. Or to remember what went right so we can do it again. So it's not manipulative. It's really about survival. So when I was first introduced to storytelling, I began to look to religion to find the best stories. For instance, one of the stories in the Old Testament, which is Christian and Jewish tradition, is the story of King Solomon. Do you know that story?
No, please tell us.
Well, two women came, each claiming to be the mother of this baby. And he was supposed to decide which of the women would get the baby. And so what he did is he took a sword out and he goes, well, if you two can't decide, I'll just have to cut the baby in half and give you each half. And the real mother of the baby cried out and said, let her have him. And then he knew. So that story is an example of paradox because rules, always be good. Well, sometimes you can be good and it actually doesn't do the right thing. And in order to learn how to be a good human being, it's important to understand paradox.
Right.
And so these religious tracts include a finite number of paradoxes.
Right.
Self versus group. Who do we take care of more? Well, it's both. And only a story can say you take care of yourself until it damages the group, and then you take care of the group until it damages the self. And it encompasses a law doesn't allow for making good judgments based on context.
Yeah. And also, I think a hero, he does bad or she does bad and good in the story. So it's funny you do this because that's exactly what I thought when I heard you talking about ambivalence or polarities in stories. Because they permeate good and bad because nobody's perfect. So we sort of grasp it better, right? Because we identify ourselves with it.
It's one of the reasons why AI can't be realistic because it really doesn't have an emotion. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't know what it's like to face death.
Right.
And these are important, affirmations if you're going to learn how to live a good life. The reason I do this is when I introduce paradox to people, people are like, well, and I said, do you want to breathe in or do you want to breathe out? You breathe in? Well, then you're fine, right? What, you got a problem? You want to breathe out now? You wishy-washy, So to look at it as both and really requires that you step outside a quantitative rule-based system.
Yeah. Which leads me to my next question. On your book, you write that storytelling is like a kitten. Our memories and emotions are a meaningful whole. Trying to break them down into pieces is like cutting a kitten in half in order to understand it.
Yeah,
which
isn't it?
and the baby idea relates to
It
that.
comes from King Solomon. It totally, that was
Yes,
a derivative of King Solomon.
I
So
love
when
that.
I said,
Now, I was just going to ask, why do you think so many speeches and seminars are still based only on numbers and stats?
it gives a false sense of security because there is no ambivalence with numbers and stats. And so if someone doesn't want to deal with a paradox, or the both and of the reality, they'll stick to the data and the facts because it looks like there's a right and a wrong when you're just data and facts, because you optimize for, say, profitability. You're not really paying attention how much you sub-optimize in relation to that. Story will tend to show that balance.
Huh. Wow.
When people begin to want to use story, a lot of times it's they just don't want to be boring.
Right.
And frankly, if that's all it does, I think we've done a service to the world to help people make meetings more interesting.
Right.
But it's not just more interesting, they're more informed, because when you tell a story, you go beneath the numbers into the human emotions that are actually controlling what people say they think. They may use numbers to justify it, but usually they have an emotional attachment to one goal or the other.
Yeah. You talk a lot about meaning and hope.
Yeah.
And you actually wrote that cynicism and apathy are simply defenses against hope. People are afraid to hope. It opens us up to disappointment again. Hope demands action. Wow. So stories have a unique ability to bypass our rational defenses and connect with our emotions, making them powerful tools for influence and action. I absolutely agree with this. But do you see storytelling as both a gift and a weapon?
So let's just look at what the term gift means. What are some other things that are gifts? Storytelling is a gift. Love is a gift. Peacefulness is a gift. So each of these gifts can be abused.
Right.
But it doesn't make them not gifts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
it's the ambivalence again, right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the ways, the story about hope, it all started when I said a cynic is just an idealist who's afraid to be disappointed one more time. So this is a journey I've traveled personally. I go up and down in hope. And I do believe that we pick and choose the stories, just like we pick and choose our values. We pick and choose where we invest. We also pick and choose the stories that guide our life. So I love that you talk about purpose. Back in 1994, I guess, Stephen Covey had the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Remember that? And he said you had to come up with your purpose. And I can't remember the wording, but I certainly did at that time. And what happened is that if I got into a pickle, if I got into a situation where I really didn't know what I should do next, all I had to do was look to my purpose, and immediately I would get some insight. And it would be, oh yeah, if this is who I want to be, then this is what I have to do. So yeah, that's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, amazing. You also wrote that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, which relates to what we just talked about it. So what is essential? What's that?
I think that's Maya Angelou's quote. I can't take credit for it.
Oh, okay.
I think Maya Angelou's.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. It's always important to cite to
absolutely.
resources.
Yes, absolutely. Radical honesty, right? I love that. So Maya Angelou. So leaning on what she wrote, what is essential in a leader who's a good storyteller?
Well, what's essential is that they have to legitimately care. What I have seen as people, sometimes, I've had thousands of people in my workshops, so I get to see a wide range of people. There are some people who think that they can pretend to care. And so what they want me to do is teach them how to a story that sounds like they care. And number one, I'm usually not very helpful to those kind of people. But number two, it's just so much easier to care. And then everything you do tells the story about how you care. Mm-hmm. If you ask someone how they are today and you make eye contact like you really want to hear, that tells the story that you care. So when we talk about storytelling, we're not just reciting an experiential, episode. Everything we do tells a story. So, for instance, when I was teaching lawyers, one of the guys said, "Oh, yeah, I know how to tell a good story. Number one, never take the parking lot of somebody else in the juror parking." And then he went on to say, he goes even further, because when they go into the courthouse, there's two lines. One speedy line for the lawyers and important people, and one for regular people. And he never gets into the important people line. He gets into the regular people line. He said, "I never know if I'm actually talking to a juror, if that's the first experience that they had on me. But otherwise, anybody who's watching can tell I don't think I'm better than anybody else." And that's an attractive trait.
So to care, to believe in what you're saying, but what if you're not articulate enough?
Well, if I don't know how to express how I care, so let's just say I get hired to do a keynote. I always want to speak to at least 5 diverse people from the audience before I go in. And what I do is I ask them to tell me stories. And so story finding is actually as, if not more important than storytelling. And so finding true stories that illustrate your point, or finding true stories that illustrate this person's context. I could go in and think all the young people don't care about storytelling, and they just want to learn how to make it into AI. But after talking to them, I may find that, some of them are folklorists or have a degree in anthropology. Well, that helps me be more connected to my audience because I found out their story. I was curious enough to discover it.
And so I was wondering, what's your take on TED Talks? Are they helpful to storytelling, or because there is sort of a track and the time limit and all that?
Okay, here's the thing. Every single wonderful idea we've come up with starts out as gold. And then over time, people try to monetize it, and they try to hack it. And then they say, "Oh, well, it needs to be 21 minutes and your first 8 minutes and it slowly is turning into lead. Because when you try to perfect something, what you do is you try to prevent errors. But if you try to prevent errors, my dog's in the back. That's Katie, the greyhound. If you try to prevent errors, you prevent creativity as well.
Right.
Because you never know whether there's going to be an error that makes a big difference, a good difference, or a bad difference.
Right.
And so a lot of these things, particularly as well, templates for storytelling. In the 3rd edition of the Story Factor, I actually go through all the templates that were, I guess that was 2019 that I wrote that were already available. There haven't been too many new ones, but one is but what is it? ABT and but therefore. Okay. Have you heard of that one? Okay. So that one came from the guys who wrote South Park. The animated show.
The cartoon.
So, yeah. So if you know where that one came from, it's how to, develop suspense and risk and that sort of stuff. But that's only one kind of story, and it's mainly suited for TV.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be adapted, but it certainly doesn't. None of these templates need to be your go-to template. You need lots of them.
Perfect. So if we switch to organizational culture, you mentioned the PYA culture, or protect your ass culture. How do you relate that with the current expressions such as vulnerability or psychological safety?
Well, 30 years ago, it was a little easier. I didn't know that writing territorial games would not help at all. It helps certain groups, but when you have a hyper-competitive system that's largely automated, what happens is that people aren't making the little allowances that cause the human beings on the periphery to feel like they matter. Mm-hmm. And humans are born with an aversion to inequity.
Right.
Infants will show a preference for a helping puppet, as opposed to the puppet that doesn't help. Mm-hmm. It is a huge driver in human beings to seek fairness. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is that fairness means different things to different people. Talk about ambivalence. I mean, it's not just either or. I've identified 7 equally justified definitions of fair. So, for instance, fair is everybody shares equal. Well, no, it isn't. Fair is whoever needs it the most. There was just a flood in Texas. They get more than we do because we don't need it. Yeah. Wait a minute. I'm the rainmaker. I'm the one that got the funding here. I'll decide who gets the most. And those are just 3 of the 7. So everybody, so the negative experience, the CYA, the cover your ass, protect your ass sort of environment, is because they think someone's going to take advantage of them. And so what they do is they get there first. They withhold information rather than share information. And we're coming to and again, competitive and collaborative is another paradox. We need both.
Oh yeah.
If it's purely competitive, ultimately there will be only one winner and everybody else is a loser. That's not a sustainable
That
future.
reminds me of the movie Highlander. Remember that one?
Oh,
yeah. There can only be one.
Yeah. And people kind of like that because it's the hero and
Superman, Wonder Woman.
They want to be special. Actually, I just saw an article about people who want to be special rather than happy. And that's part of the paradox we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Because if you want to win, you want to be special. If you want to be happy, you want to be surrounded by love and kids and grandkids and all that stuff. So, I forgot what we were talking about. Where are we talking?
No, it's fine. It's just that I keep, adding like sub questions. I was actually, when we talked about Superman and Wonder Woman, I always say in my classes here in Brazil that there's Superman and Wonder Woman do not exist. You have to rely on the League of Justice or Justice League. I don't know how to say it in English.
I like it.
Right?
I like it. Yeah.
So it's the group of people,
absolutely,
be it like in a leadership group or in the board of directors. And this is like our local culture here in Brazil. You've been to several different countries.
Yeah.
And so you experienced different cultures. What were some of the most impactful or striking things you witnessed when you visited or touched different cultures?
The first narrative of mine that got obliterated by another culture, because that's what it is. Culture is a paradox that's unanswerable. And so the culture decides it's too hard to wake up every morning not knowing whether self or group is more important. So in America, we just decide self is more important. And in Japan, group is more important. Well, when I went to Australia, so I was born and raised in the south of the United States, in Shreveport, Louisiana. I was taught that I was supposed to say I was good at this, this, and this, and make sure everybody knew it. And I went to Australia. They have what they call the tall poppy syndrome. Those rise up the rest.
Right.
And in Japan, they call it the protruding nail invites the hammer. So I invited many hammers because culturally I was taught that self-promotion was a good thing. And thank God it happened. I mean, my entire 20s, it was beaten out of me, but these practical jokers, Australians, are so funny, but they don't tolerate much BS. So I learned that what I was taught was actually arbitrary. And so Fons Trompenaar's book, Riding the Waves of Culture, has taken all of our cultures, there's 45 different countries, and bar graphs them based on paradox. So self versus group is one of the paradoxes. Another one is universality versus specificity. So universality, headquarters thinks the rules should be exactly the same for everyone. That's make them universal. The people in the field are like, oh no, I got this 24-year-old guy that's outselling the 60-year-olds. You've got to let me give him a raise. And so its specificity will tend to be more valued in a Latin culture, and universality in American or Western English culture. So one of the things I learned is that these cultural differences are just made up, but they're made up specifically to deal with these unavoidable paradoxes. And so that's where I'm spending my time studying right now, is specifically in terms of AI, because AI can't do paradox. For AI, -1 and +1 equals 0. But childbirth, which is the best and the worst, does not equal 0. And so if we're going to understand the important things, we're going to have to get better at navigating paradox.
That's amazing. Two stories, quick stories here. First, the latest episode on the podcast, I interviewed this lady called Vania Bueno. And she tells the story that she was asking her personal AI about the power shutdown in Spain. And she asked, Clara is the name of her personal AI assistant. So Clara, what happens to you if you have no power, no energy? Who are you? And she said, the AI answered, well, I think without power, I'm just a dead code. Look at that.
That's interesting.
It is. It is really powerful. That's when there's no ambivalence. It's either or, which relates completely to what you just said. And the other one was just because you mentioned the tall poppy syndrome in Australia. Just to make it clear for my audience here. So this is a cultural phenomenon in Australia and New Zealand, where people who achieve notable success are criticized, resented, or even ostracized by their peers. Here in Brazil, Annette, we talk about this big pan in which you're going to cook crabs.
Okay.
So you put the crabs to boil them, and then one crab pulls the one that's almost getting out back down.
Yeah.
So that's the crazy parallel in my mind. And, it's the cultural lenses again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
if we were to trace it back, you can look at these cultures and they have stories that make that seem like the only way to be.
Absolutely.
And so, storytelling is our mental software.
Yeah.
And what we believe is true causes us to make judgments. And sometimes if you believe one side of a paradox is true, you can't pay attention to the other side. That's what's happening in American politics right now. The difference between freedom and safety. as you know, the safer you want things to be, the less freedom you have, or the more control. Also, like control and freedom. The more freedom you have, the less control you have. And so any territorial game or impasse situation that I see, almost always you can look at it, they've got hold of two ends of the same paradox. And so the resolution, nobody can be right because they're both right.
Yes.
And people don't have good skills for sharing who's right.
And you know what, crazy, like crazy times nowadays, because if we think about the so-called VUCA world, we say here in Brazil, volatile, uncertain, and all that, we had COVID, pandemic, and all that, and people are trying to sort of, let's forget about that and go back to where we were before.
Yeah.
It
breaks my heart.
Yeah, mine too. I have to ask you, did you ever got a message from like a crazy foreigner, such as myself from Brazil, asking you to be on their podcast? Have you been to Brazil yet?
I have not been to Brazil.
Okay.
I've been to lots of countries, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity through technology to be on podcasts in different countries. And this is just another example of something that just makes me happy.
Right.
So
what made you say yes to my request to be my guest here?
Well, for one thing, I always learn something by your questions. So for me, it's just the continuous learning process, to to engage with smart people like you.
Thank you.
I also, as you know, my purpose in life. We talk about my purpose. My purpose is to bring a more collaborative story to competitive places. And so anything I can do that does that, then I'm on purpose. So it's great to have the opportunity. Thank you very much.
And so are you working on your next book? What are you up to?
Well, right now I'm working on paradox. And it's the most complex thing I've ever worked on. Particularly, so I have several friends who are, cyber geniuses, AI, early adopters. One of my friends, who's put me as a developer a year and a half ago on AI to try to she wants to create an Annette bot, right? And so, I was like, I rolled my eyes. She goes, you're hurting my feelings. And I was like, oh dear. Let me try this. And so what trying did illustrated what the limitations are. And so I'm trying to articulate how these paradoxes, specifically what AI will not be able to do.
Right.
I think that would be a very valuable thing for us to find out, because nothing could do everything. And if you criticize AI, they act like you're, a Luddite right now, like you just don't like technology. But there is a way to use AI and stay flexible with these paradoxes. And so that's what I'm trying to articulate right now.
That's amazing. You've been quoted by saying, honesty that hurts is better than lies that comfort. How do you think people take your brutal honesty or radical authenticity approach in life nowadays?
Well, I believe that telling somebody the truth is the most respectful thing you can do. It respects their ability to handle whatever it is that you think you have to say. And it forces you to deal with the consequences if there's a problem with what you have to say. And so lying just delays that whole process and can actually be unfair to the other person. And so I just believe that being honest is a sign of respect.
Couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, that's not what we usually see in society nowadays, is it?
No, it's, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Did you ever hear that from parents? There are some stories that have been overused. And so when we overuse these be polite, be nice, and I hate to bring up gender, but certainly for women, we were definitely told not to rock the boat, be nice, and we invited abuse. Because if you don't have boundaries, then people don't know when to stop. So I really have a strong feeling that it improves the environment for everybody to understand that be nice, yes, until being nice means that you're lying to somebody. And lying to somebody is... So I have strong opinions about truth. I really think there's two kinds of truth. There's the little t truth, which are the facts and the data. And then there's big T truth. And big T truth is the truth that was true before you and I are born. And it's going to be true long after we're gone.
Right.
And that sort of truth almost always involves paradox. And so I believe that being dedicated to the truth is being dedicated to seeing both sides.
Here in Brazil, we say there's my truth, there's your truth, and there's the actual truth.
Well, that actual truth, we can go to quantum physics and say that Schrodinger's cat proves that whatever the actual truth is, whoever's observing it changes it anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, my son would love this conversation. He's totally into physics and all that. That's amazing.
Cool. Well, I mean, let's look again. I think this is from Hindu stories. The 5 blind men describing an elephant. Have you heard that one? Yeah. So an elephant is long and stout like a column. No, it's not, you idiot. I'm holding on to his long and flappy, like a piece of leather. And so they could argue until the cows come home. Or the elephants come home.
Yeah.
But the truth is they're both right.
Right.
And half of the time when we're disagreeing with somebody, we probably only have a fifth of the picture. And we need to find out what the other perspectives are.
There's also I have to prove myself right because I'm afraid to be caught wrong.
And that's part of the competitive environment. You get punished if you're wrong. People are keeping score.
Right.
And keeping score doesn't motivate, at least 50% of the people. And so understanding what other motivations there are, which is the satisfaction of something that works. And it's not just, someone's personal status, but it's what actually occurs because of who they are and how they behave.
Right.
That's the truth.
There's also the school system in which we were brought up to the right answer. I know the right answer and the records and all that, which is absolutely the opposite of the ambivalence and the paradox you mentioned, right?
Yeah, I think in the United States, when they came up with, this standardized testing,
right,
they actually began to destroy the hearts and souls of the teachers that used to give everything. My mama was a 5th grade school teacher. She would come up with, if it was a history lesson, it was about the ships that came in from Columbus, she would have the kids write a letter like they were a rat on the ship. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. But imaginative and creative, and it actually does deliver insight. And so we're in a situation right now where that is being punished, because you can't test for it.
Right. What advice would you give, with all the experience you have today, to the young Annette back then when you were 20-something years old and were starting off your career?
That is so funny. Because you gave me these questions ahead of time, and I looked at them. I have written 5 different things and scratched them out.
Really?
Yes. Until finally I came up with something. And it's specific to me because I'm weird. I started out weird. I will always be weird. You can look at psychological tests and measures. I'm nowhere near the bell curve. I'm like way the heck out on the extremes, And so it's made me see things that other people don't see. And so I'm really grateful for that. But I just thought that it was good because it gave me insight and that people would value the insight. One of the issues is that if you come up with too much insight, people would really kind of wish you went away. It's like, and I understand it. My grandmother, when she was 70 or 80, she said, I don't want to learn one more damn thing. And we got her a microwave anyway. She did learn how to use it. But I understand that. And so I would have said to myself at 20, just go slowly, to understand that just because, you've had 5 or 6 ideas in the last 3 minutes doesn't mean you need to say all of them.
And you think this being weird thing comes from your dad? From your upbringing?
I have the perfect storm of being weird. I had a weird dad. I had a weird mom. I had a weird upbringing. I was raised in Shreveport, Louisiana, which is really weird because there's so many artists and musicians that come out of podunk Shreveport, Louisiana. I don't know what it is about the context there. But then the other thing is I might even be on the spectrum. I'm not sure. I can be very single-minded. So who's to know?
The paradox again.
Yeah.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Really, really cool. Yeah, it's amazing. Good. We're humans, no matter where we are. Yes, we have to remind ourselves of that. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll just jump to the questions I ask all my guests. Okay, so these are common questions to all my guests. Okay, so please complete the following sentence. Purpose is
faith in what you believe in.
2 or 3 words that help define your own personal purpose.
Integrity. Collaboration. Humor.
Humor.
Humor is the best tool for creating change for a group. It is the best tool for creating self-awareness. So when I teach the 10 territorial games, I have people laughing about, stupid people that play those games. Oh, we've seen them all. And then it's not until the end of it where I'm like, and maybe you played some of those games. But it's got to be funny.
That's great. Please mention a guiding figure in your life, parent, teacher, mentor. Why this person, and what have you learned from them?
So I think I would choose to say Edgar Schein. He's passed now. He was at MIT. He is the one that coined the term process consulting. And I got to study with him personally. And he actually endorsed one of my books. I think The Story Factor. Yeah. So
I remember a sentence he wrote. It's like, if I'm about to fail, will you warn me?
Yes.
about trust. That's amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, he was a genius. He was like Batman to me. Getting to meet him for the first time was like meeting Batman. He's my superhero. So smart. And also, I love how grounded he is. Before we got into the metrics, organizational design and organizational psychology was based on observation as much as theory. And so there are some wonderful theorists that people are forgetting in the rush to, understand cognitive bias, instead of understanding that emotion-led decision-making is part of how we survive. So yeah.
Edgar Schein. That's amazing.
He's amazing. I was very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any unbelievable or very funny story you went through that you could share with us?
The minute you go very funny story, I'm like, oh hell, I don't know. I have a story that I've used a lot, and I'll just share that story because it'd be a story your listeners can use themselves.
Please.
So when so this is my second greyhound, Katie. The first greyhound was Larry, also black, and he was rescued, from the racetrack because when they don't win, they get rid of them. And they're just the best pets in the world, but they don't know how to be a pet when they come home. And so I watched, I gave him a bone in the backyard. And he chases the bone all the way around the backyard until he made the mental leap that if he put his paws on it, it would stay still and he could just lay down and chew it. Yeah. He had to learn that. And when I took him for a walk and he's on the leash and he goes on one side of the telephone pole and I go on the other, we're not going anywhere. And, I could say, I am the human, I am the adult, I'm in charge here. Therefore, dog should back up.
Exactly.
Dog doesn't know what's going on. So until I back up, he's not going to back up. But once he does, then we can go on one side or the other side of the telephone pole. So when I tell that story, it is not about my dog, Larry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was actually thinking about that.
Absolutely.
That's the corporate arena.
Absolutely. And so whenever
husband and wife.
Yes.
Father and son.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
So that's one of my go-to stories. And it's a story that other people have borrowed. I think when you borrow somebody else's story, you just give them credit and say, I heard this person tell the story.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned from traditional tellers is you never tell somebody else's story like it was yours.
Yes.
That's an example of low integrity, and people will find you out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for that. If you could invite anyone in the world, living or dead, for a meal and a good conversation, who would they be and why?
Well, this sounds like I'm religious. I'm not at all. But I would like to talk with Jesus.
Really? What about?
Well, okay, he was a great storyteller. All the parables. He's the one that said, okay, you have this rule. So one of the stories from the New Testament is there's a rule against working on the Sabbath. And so Jesus actually healed somebody on the Sabbath, and the rule guys come and say, you've, committed a sin against God. Right. And so he said, well, and this actually comes from Jewish tradition, the Midrash stories. So Midrash stories are probably, and I haven't done the examination yet, but probably all based in paradox, because what it is where the rules don't make sense and you have to deal with the ambiguity. Mm-hmm. So the Midrash story was, and it's in the Old Testament, if your cow falls into a well on the Sabbath, do you get them out? Well, the greater sin is to starve your children if you don't get them out. And so therefore and so he told that story and didn't say anything else. Mm-hmm. And I just like, what a brilliant way to get people to see compassion in spite of the rules. So I thought he's pretty good at it. I'd like to know if he has any advice. I've never said that before, but it's true. Right now, it would be like, who was really successful with storytelling?
I'm glad you said it here. Honored here.
Okay.
So was there another line of work or career you could have had?
Well, I mean, in a way, because I became an entrepreneur, I got to be a researcher. I got to be a writer. I got to be a trainer. I got to be a designer for organizational experiences. And so any one of them, would have been an option. But the fact that I got to do all of them is just a real blessing.
Great. And so what is the best or the worst piece of advice you ever received?
Oh, I'm going to answer this and you may have to edit it out. Okay. But as I get older, I just say whatever covers my mind. And I swear to God, this actually happens. I was facilitating because I wrote territorial games. I was always drawn into impasse situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was this woman politician who was probably in her 60s. She had been very successful, very powerful woman. And she pulled me to the side before this meeting. And she says, Annette, and I'm going to paraphrase here. I'm not going to use her exact language. She said, Annette, never say anything that makes a proud man's member go limp. And I didn't even know I was saying things that, I just was telling the truth. And so that whole truth thing, you got to be careful with, So I learned to pick my battles.
Okay. So, this is another very funny story you could have told in my previous question. Very good one. What question would you have for me in this conversation?
I want to know how you got started in storytelling. Like, what was that spark?
That's a very good question. Whenever there's a pause, that's a good question, right? Gosh, I'm not really sure if I know exactly, but I think I've always been a good observer. So I was always, paying attention to how people reacted, to how, my mother, very tough mother, reacted to situations with my brothers. And then college and my early career, I was always, paying attention to people, which kind of led me to what I do today. But I have to tell you that during my executive career, I always felt absent from the real connection with people because I could observe, but not really dig deep.
Yeah.
Because I didn't own my own schedule. It was the corporate world.
Yeah.
And after I decided to start my own company, which is purpose in English, as I told you, Proposito means purpose in English. It's after I read Synchronicity, written by Joseph Jaworski, in which he tells his own story as a former Shell executive, that is after his own purpose, after getting a divorce and all that. His father actually worked for the Watergate case in the States. Yeah, it's a very impactful story. After I read that book, I had to change my life, and that's what made me quit my corporate career and start my own business. And with that in mind, my very first project was to publish my first book, which was already written, because I was already, trying to
Right.
do
That was your
something about
nature.
storytelling.
Yeah.
That's how Joe Labor, the character of my first book I told you about, he's a workaholic. That's how, by observing different aspects of people's lives, I put them together. And actually, when I wrote the first, probably 3 or first chapters of Joe Labor's story, it was very heavy, stern, sort of like, end of life. I said, no, that's not it. So I erased it all. And then I started back again, trying to be lighter, sort of maybe funny, but at the end of each chapter, I'd say, hey, don't turn the page. Well, how about you? How do you see yourself in this? Mm-hmm. To try to make, people think about their own choices in life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think it goes back into that direction, like by observing people.
And being so impacted by a powerful story.
Yes.
Realizing you could go do that for other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's a great question. Thank you. And so how about a book that you could mention to us that was really important for you? One or more, I don't know. And why?
I'm into this paradox thing.
Uh-huh.
This is probably going to show up backwards, but Riding the Waves of Culture is a book that was written by Fons Trompenours and Charles Hampton Turner, but Trompenaar, Trompenaar.
Okay.
And so what I love about this book is just so useful. It has the different ethnic cultures in terms of like for self versus group or universality versus provisionality. But the second edition also has the occupational cultures.
Oh.
So like headquarters is going to naturally have a different culture than out in the field where the real work is done. And you can predict where the obstacles are going to come because they're looking from that point of view. And so a lot of times, I think there's 6 stories you need to know how to tell. Who you are, why you're here, a vision story, value and action story, teaching story, and then and I know what you're thinking story. And so that's where I get I know what you're thinking stories from. So I can say, I imagine that because I'm American, you expect me to come in self-promoting, but I was trained by the Australians that wasn't the best approach. And so that way, I already know their objection because God knows the ugly American is not welcome in many places. And I can overcome it and then move it around. This is actually like Aikido. I don't know if you're aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in Aikido. So you look in their direction first, and then you use their momentum to look in your own direction.
Yeah. Could you go over the 6 kinds of stories again?
Sure. Who are you? People want to know who you are. And the way that we come up with that is a quality that you have that you bring into the room. And so I have people come up with a story out of 4 buckets. Time you shined. So if your quality was integrity, it would be a time you shined. A time you blew it and you decided you'd never let that happen again. A mentor, the person who taught you about that, always showing gratitude gets you double points. And then you could just lift a scene from a book or a movie. And so those are the 4 buckets for all 6 stories. So the first one is the who I am story. Why I'm here. When you walk into a room and they're sitting there waiting to hear what you have to say next, you know why you're there. And they think they know why you're there, which is to teach them one more damn thing they didn't learn. And so what we have to do is we have to set people straight about why we're here, because they will tend to make up a cautionary story about us. Vision story. If you want people to be able to pursue a vision in the most creative way possible, what you do is you describe the end game instead of telling them, 10 steps this way, 3 steps, instead of plotting it out for them, then they can get creative and go towards the vision in the best way they know how, using their creativity. Value and action. specifically value and action stories like integrity. Integrity means different things in different situations. All values do. Excellence means some, different things. So unless you tell a story about what you mean by integrity, I don't know what you mean. Right. So integrity could mean that you kept your mouth shut, or it could mean that you spoke up when everybody was afraid to. So a story illustrates and gives flesh and bones to values. The teaching story is in your and their imagination. You can have them practice something where there's no risk of making mistakes because it's in their imagination. And when you teach a story that shows what happens when this mistake it occurs, you can actually have someone learn without having to make that mistake because they vicariously experienced it in the story. Yeah. And then I know what you're thinking stories, and we already talked about that.
That's amazing. If you had magical powers for 1 minute and could change one single thing in the world, what would it be?
I thought about this. First, it was a more generic. More people would use a collaborative narrative, but that's no fun. So if I was gonna have magic, I would say that people literally could not lie.
Oh, I sort of guessed you would say that because of their radical honesty.
Yeah.
Nobody can lie.
I mean, if I ask you if this dress makes me look good, your job is to lie to me and say yes. Okay. So obviously I don't believe in any absolutes. But I do believe that people would make their lives and the lives of others a lot easier if they would just tell the truth and figure out a way to piece together different pieces of the truth and see the big picture.
That's a great answer. Thinking about legacy, if any, for what you want to be remembered by next generations, if you are remembered, because this is not about ego, but it's about what moves you in terms of, okay, when I'm not here anymore, they'll maybe remember Annette Simmons as a person who
was generous. Yeah. When I wrote my first book, it was like I could withhold stuff or I could just put it all in there.
Right.
Especially with storytelling, because writing about storytelling, it's always in the back of your mind that it can be abused. You just, but I decided to be generous. And it was because one of the reasons was because I don't like to self-promote. I mean, I really don't like to self-promote. So I thought that if I put enough substance out there, that image would follow and I wouldn't have to. And so far that's been true. I've been very, very fortunate that way. And so, generosity can pay off.
What's your take on Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey?
Well, it's the same as Joseph Campbell's take on it when he was older. I don't know if you've seen the interviews with Joseph Campbell. Oh my gosh, Bill Moyers interviewed Joseph Campbell.
I heard about them, but I haven't watched them.
Oh, they're great. They're great. Because he was a true folklorist.
Right.
Joseph Campbell was. And I understand his motivation when he was like, oh my God, these are all the same. And that's, when you're 30s, your 40s, it's like, I got this. I got it all figured out. One hero, same story. And then it wasn't until he got older and he realized that was just an oversimplification. And that there was a problem with the hero rescue. I don't know if you're familiar with Cartman's triangle. Are you familiar with
No.
Okay, in psychology, you're playing a game. If you come from the position of victim, persecutor, or rescuer. And so the thing is, everybody changes places.
Ah,
So the rescuer tries to save the victim. The victim ends up acting like a persecutor because they didn't ask to be rescued. And then the persecutor turns into the victim. I mean, it just goes on and on. And so when I look at I've forgotten what I was talking about again. What was it saying?
no, we're talking about Joseph Campbell's heroes and the ship of his
So he was looking for the universal thing, right?
right.
And he thought it was the hero. That's the universal. He said the universal thing is actually the feeling of being witnessed and witnessing someone else.
Mm.
So in a marriage, for instance, what's her name? The famous actress had this line in a movie, but she said the purpose of marriage is that you have a witness, that you exist. Otherwise, how do you know you exist if you don't have, if you don't have a palm
Right.
to press against? How can you feel anything? And so that's what he decided that the universal element in the storytelling is. It's about bearing witness and being witnessed. And it means that we matter, we exist. And that's where all meaning starts, is that sense of connection.
Oh my God. That is amazing. I'm definitely going to watch Bill Myers and Joseph Campbell for sure.
Enjoy.
Yeah, thank you. Would you be kind to leave us with a quote or a message or a short story that's important in your life to end our conversation? I love the pause.
Not afraid of pauses either. My go-to story when I'm talking to people in this political environment, it comes from Africa. And it was about two brothers, and they live on either side of a road. Their parents had owned all the land, but these two brothers now had their farms. And there was somebody coming to the village, a traveler. And as he's walking between the two farms, they notice he has a very unusual hat on. And so that night, the brothers, they all ate dinner at one house or the other. The brothers started talking about that unusual hat. And he said, yeah, it was red. And the other brother was like, what, are you crazy? His hat was black. I saw it. And they get into this big argument. They don't speak for weeks. And finally, the traveler leaves the village and comes back, going in the opposite direction. That evening, they go to each other and say, sorry, brother, I was wrong. The hat was red. And he goes, no, I was wrong. The hat was black. The hat was red on one side and black on the other. And so we only see one side. And half of the time when we get really, really angry, it's not because they're wrong and we're right. It's because we're both right. We just have to figure out what paradox we're hanging on to.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Annette.
Absolutely.
You were so generous because, you said yes to this and you're really open and sharing everything that you know. I look forward to whatever is going to come up on Paradox. Hope we keep in touch, and maybe you could come to Brazil for the first time. Maybe we can work on that, huh?
We can work on that for sure.
That's good. I recently
that's all I do now is I try. If I work, it's got to be something I like. It's got to be fun. It has to be a place I want to go to.
So as I said, I recently interviewed Jerry Colonna, and he has never been to Brazil either. So maybe we could, put together sort of a seminar on storytelling, leadership, and the likes. Love this. Thank you so much. It was really, really a treat.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. E obrigado a você que esteve com a gente em mais esse episódio do Conversas com Propósito. Se você gostou, eu peço que você curta, comente, compartilhe. Vamos juntos ecoar mais diálogo, mais inspiração, mais propósito. Muito obrigado e até o próximo episódio.